Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. The first Age of Empires 4 patch came out today. It's number 7989 apparently, which if they're numbering in sequential order means there's been over 700 versions between release day and this patch. Either way, they've had 18 days to address bugs and exploits in the game at launch, plus the previous issues already identified in the closed beta and stress test. Some people even had hopes that this patch would have balance changes that could help the multiplayer scene. What we got today was, frankly, disappointing. In fairness, they almost definitely have something a lot bigger they're working on behind the scenes, but the fact this is the first thing we're getting in almost 3 weeks after release isn't great from an optics standpoint. Let's look at the patch though, and you can see if you agree. The first thing is you'll have better performance now when moving the camera. Overall, I have to say the game runs really well, and that is worth acknowledging. At least for me, on max settings, the game always looks smooth, and personally, I've never noticed a drop in performance when moving the camera, but so far, we're starting off well, and to be fair, this may have been a pretty big job behind the scenes. Next, Steam users can link their Xbox Live accounts in-game, which again sounds fine for people that applies to. Third, they fixed a bug where health bars would sometimes disappear. Now, I play with those turned off, but again, I'm sure some people out there are happy to hear this. Fourth, and finally a gameplay change, and a much needed one at that, is the Mongol town center can no longer be placed in an unexplored area, or more importantly, within 20 tiles of an enemy town center. If you were lucky enough to never encounter this online, the problem was the Mongol tech's superior mobility is bugged. So instead of adding 50% to packed building speed, it seems to do much more than that. That meant Mongols could easily pack up and move their town center around their opponent's base and deny resources, snipe villagers, or even get into fights with the enemy town center directly. Because they pack and move so quickly, it could then outrun enemy units to escape any sort of danger, which was obviously unintended. You can see here 20 tiles is a pretty decent bit of breathing space and guarantees that players have access to their starting resources. At the least, I think this will do what's intended and shut down that particular strategy that many people were calling broken. And finally, the last change mentioned is some small adjustments to in-game localization, which I assume means fixing mistranslations in different languages. So that's the entire patch, though that said they also have some known issues that they've listed. First of all replays prior to today will no longer work, period. They also mention the Mongol town center description doesn't specify it needs to be placed in an explored area, and this is something they'll get around to fixing. Personally, I don't think it's an incredibly important thing to mention in the tooltips, and wouldn't even crack the top 20 tooltip mistakes in the game. But at the same time, it's also confusing why they would delay this, as it feels like a very quick update to a bit of text. Speaking of future updates though, they also mentioned the known issues of the Rus infinite relic duplication bug, Mongols packed buildings being continuously repaired when they aren't supposed to be, and the superior mobility tech giving much more than its intended 50% speed boost. The Rus one especially is a borderline game-breaking bug, where a Rus player can cheat to essentially get infinite gold in the late game. Most of these feel to me, in my admittedly non-expert opinion, like they should be pretty simple changes to a single number in the game files. From the outside, it seems a little strange to prioritize a health bar glitch and localization issues over patching widely known game-breaking exploits. AoE4 has a long list of documented issues, and amazingly most players actually agree on what those issues are, with many of them being identified as far back as the stress test. It's one thing to release a game that's unpolished, and I think the consensus is Age of Empires 4 is a lot of fun at its core if you can look past the rough edges, but in order to hold the goodwill of the fanbase and retain players for the long run, they need to be very publicly improving it, or at least communicating the long list of things that are being worked on, so people can be optimistic about its direction. With so few patches, the level of secrecy around what they're prioritizing is confusing, and for example, the official known issues and solutions page, which admittedly says it's not a comprehensive list, has just 11 items on it, 4 of which we've already talked about. Sorry to be such a downer about the patch, guys, but like a lot of people, I was just hoping for quite a bit more. I'm sure they are working on something much bigger behind the scenes, but at this point, especially with this being the first patch we're seeing, the optics really aren't great. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.